and I was really, really wrong. Because I'm getting older and getting a few more gray hairs, I am trying to learn how to not make that mistake again. So although I'm going to talk purely about things that I'm seeing, even though they may be things that you're not seeing, I think they're the direction that I think testing is going. And I think I'm onto something because I've been bouncing some of these ideas off people for a while, and I get a lot of different reactions, but two predominantly. I get head nods going, yeah, why are you talking about that? Why are you doing that? And then I get people saying, you're batshit crazy, shut up. So I feel like it's, there's something there. That's the setup. So what this talk is about embracing change. And how many of you, and again, I'll keep this very interactive, are your roles changing? A little bit, been doing the same thing you're doing 5 years ago? Nobody, right? So what I see when I hang out in the Twitterverse and the blogosphere and go to conferences is there are people who embrace change, like me. Like, I like change, I want to try new things. And I see some people who are, I've been doing this job for a long time now, and I'm pretty happy doing it the same way I've been doing it. And just me, I worry about those people. So I think things are changing. That may work for a lot of people, but I think things are changing enough where if you're afraid of change, it's going to be a rough ride here. Okay, let's get into some meat. Need to go back about 6 years. I said I'd talk about some.
I think 6, give or take.
Yeah, cassette tape. I'm going to go back 6 years of my time. And I want to talk about some of the things that I've done and learned that have formed the opinions I have today. So just about 6 years ago, a little bit more, I started out on the Xbox One team at Microsoft. I was there when the Xbox One was this huge, like 80-pound PC. And the cool thing about Xbox One is just PC components. The prototypes were these massive, heavy things. I honestly, to this day, think it wasn't all components. They put extra weight in there just to make them harder to steal. Ridiculous. But what I learned on that team, which was a traditional test team, we started off with, let me think, maybe when the project first started, when I first joined, there was a dedicated test team of 100 testers-ish. You got it right around 100. That's quite a few testers, all Microsoft SDETs, and we did pretty much typical, write a bunch of automation, make sure it ran in the lab, find the bugs, work with dev to fix the bugs, et cetera, et cetera. When I joined the team as an individual contributor, and my manager at the time asked if I wanted to be the manager of a tools team to write test infrastructure and tools. And I said, hell no. And the reason is this is a little bit of this is Microsoft culture and rewards, is that tools teams often were sort of second class. I was trying to think of a nice way to put it. Sort of the second class team. Well, you're not contributing to product code, and you're not helping us test quality into the product. A little bash on testing there. And so really, no matter what you do, it's just sort of a little second class, we'll call it. But I also thought that in order to build a good tools team that the whole team would use, it needed to be more of a community effort. I wanted every team to have some skin in the game. So I have no problem with influence, not authority. I have no problem putting on a project manager hat once in a while. So what I did was I ran, basically as part of my job, an open source project to build test tools for the Xbox. And I had a couple people that were peers of mine that worked on it full time, and a lot of people that worked around the org that I pull in from time to time. We do, at the beginning, 4-week sprints, then 2-week sprints, where we'd start off, it was an open meeting for sprint planning. People would show up, they had things they wanted to work on, and we would prioritize and talk through the details, and then we'd work on it, we'd see what got done, when we get done, do retrospectives, etc. And it's one of the things in my career I'm the most proud of, because it worked out really, really well. And for a lot of different reasons, I won't go into why, but I communicated the test managers on what we were working on and what got done. So it's all very transparent, and I feel like that made them want to give people's time to come work on projects in the future. So one of the big things that came out of that was, let me ask first, have you heard about all of the Xbox Ones getting bricked? Anybody? No, you haven't. That's good. One of the things, originally, remember the Xbox One was originally a PC, and what we did was just use the remote boot that's built into all PCs, or all networked PCs, most networked PCs I should say, and we used remote boot to put a new OS on there, and we kind of did our test lab that way, pretty much the way the Windows team did. When we moved to the console, and we didn't have that BIOS with the remote boot, we had, oh, well shoot, what are we going to do? But just about the same time, Xbox team was developing the the utility used to flash the Xbox and the new OS on. Actually, how many of you have an Xbox One? Just me? Oh, good. All right. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't. Good. So we use the same feature that's used to update your Xbox to update all our machines in the lab. We found a lot of bugs in that process, and indirectly, I think we got enough testing on that that getting those bugs fixed has made that process much more stable. And just one more bit of context on that before I get back to the regular presentation is Xbox One shipped in November 2013, I believe. I think that's the right year. They were in stores then. We actually had to start manufacturing them in June, so by the previous June. So that June, we had to have an Xbox One that was, if it could do one thing and one thing only, had to be stable enough and have a good enough update experience to get the proper OS needed to play games on the Xbox, and that all worked out great.
Right.
So, and that came from like, let's figure out how we're going to test this thing efficiently, ended up being a great way to test a very important feature overall. So what I learned there was the value of community. Another thing I did was I started sending a weekly newsletter to everybody in the test world. And at first it was about communicating like tools, like, hey, I have code coverage working on Xbox, here's how it works. Or here's some ways to use this. And it would be, a 10-minute read, 5-minute read, depending on how fast you skim. And then as the team grew, I ended up expanding who got that mail. And eventually it was going to about 2,000 testers across Xbox, Xbox Live, GamesOrg, everyone remotely involved in making the Xbox, and it became a great way to build community. And what I learned is that community is super important in accomplishing things in software. I wasn't smart enough to take that idea and apply it immediately to my next project, but it was looking back, it's something that's influenced a lot of what I've done since then. So let's put a pin in that for now, and we'll fast forward again to the Xbox One is shipped. Woohoo! So what do? I take a month off and go to Australia because I'm fried. I say my 2 years on Xbox were the best 5 years of my career. So I came back and I worked on a total science project that I knew from day one would never ship at Microsoft called Project Astoria. And this was the thing to make Android apps run on Windows Phone. When you corner me outside because you're afraid to ask during the presentation, I will tell you all the reasons why I knew it could never ship. But it was a resume piece. I was thinking, at this point, I have been in software 20-ish years, and I thought, this is a good opportunity to get paid my full salary and learn Linux and Java. So I never to turn down an opportunity to learn. That's what I did. I worked on this project. This was one thing Microsoft did at this time. If you remember back, Keith may remember the year, but 2004-ish, Microsoft decided that, SDETs are good, therefore everyone's an SDET will figure out what to do with the STEs. They like to swing that pendulum. And what happened right around this time in 2014 was Microsoft said, hey, there are some teams out there with no testers and they're doing a pretty good job. No more testers, everyone's either a developer or does data stuff. And I stood back, I shook my head, and I thought this is, that when you watch the movie, this is not going to end well. And to be fair, in case you haven't noticed, Microsoft is still in business and doing quite well. And I think it goes to slight commentary. The credit we have, they have smart and persistent and people who made it work despite, in my opinion, not being the best way to make that transition. And I'll talk about some better ways to make it in a minute, because I'm sure some of you have been, I won't ask for a show of hands for fear of tears, but some of you may have been at a company who just said, okay, everyone's a developer. What do I do? Don't nod your head, it scares me. Hurts me a little bit right here. We had no testers. But we had a test team. In fact, my team, the whole team was like 100 people. There was maybe 20 of us in the, what were we called? The data and quality? I don't remember what we were called. But it was all the same people that had been testers in different parts of the Xbox org just a few months earlier.
Data scientists?
That wasn't the name of the org. It doesn't matter. Maybe data and fundamentals?
Okay.
Anyway. But we're starting from the ground up on something that was a peer service. We had some good ideas on how to do this. What I learned there is developers can actually learn to be pretty good testers, especially in test automation, functional test automation, integration tests. What I did in that job while I was learning Linux and Java is I reviewed a lot of code. It started off like this. Developers are checking code. I see a code review thing come in, I look at it, and I reply, you should write some tests for this. And they go, oh, well, doesn't the test, oh shoot, yeah, you're right. Crap! And then I do that once in a while, and then it moved into a little more assertive, where are the tests? Oh, yeah. I'm gonna check them in later. I said, nah, check them in now. And they slowly got used to writing tests along with their code. And then a lot of you have written test automation, and you kind of already know, you're educated, you know the test smells, the things that are weird. And then their tests would come in and I go, how about this sleep here? Got something better to you there? Or this is a pretty convoluted, complex, what are you doing here? And started asking all those questions you'd ask in a real test code review. And what happened all along here is it's just me being a tester, not a dick, a tester. And I just asking him questions, asking him questions to make them aware. And what happened over time is they began to anticipate the questions I would ask and start asking the questions of each other. They didn't outright say, Alan's going to ask where your tests are. But we get a dev lead saying, make sure you have tests for this. And I go, yeah, that's right. And that team, and again, this is not, there's a lot more to testing other than writing automation. There's a lot more to trying to figure out where the bugs are than writing a bunch of automation. But as far as learning how to write good automation, I did it on that team almost purely by code review. I did do some pair programming, pair testing as well to help get some ideas across. But that team got to be pretty good at writing tests just by me doing probably too many code reviews. But the big lesson learned there was, oh, they can learn this stuff. I had heard people say that it's not in their DNA, we should have other people write tests. I thought, no. Just making sure it wasn't mine, that's all right. I don't care if yours rings. Also, I learned, it was my first real exposure to the power of data. And the first one happened before I joined the team. There was one of the managers on the team had recently come from this little side project, again, didn't ship, to stream. It was a streaming app, I'll just call it that, for Windows. And what they did was at the end of their session, they asked users to rate the session, 1 through 5 stars. If they gave less than 5 stars, they would, another dialogue asking, what problems did you see? Describe your experience. You guys have all seen stuff like this. And it's, looking at that data in, once you get 100 users, is a pretty boring job. How many of you like to be bored? Me neither. So what this team did, they didn't like being bored either. What they did was they took the data, they went through it one by one and looked at the verbatim feedback and said, how would we know in code if what's going on here. Like someone may say, the video was laggy. They go, well, that could be networking, it could be video. They go into the product code and add a little bit of logging to try and see, to try and grab frame rate, to try and grab network speed, network packet loss. And for every single one of those, they went through and they modeled it and kind of went through and kept on collecting data, a long process, but within not too long of a period, just based on that, they could look at the data and predict with a high accuracy the star rating someone would give their session. It's like, holy crap, that's cool. So then on this team, I was originally, because originally the team was very small, we didn't have anyone that knew anything about data, so I was the de facto data guy. And I've done this a lot in my career where I'll take on things that I have no idea how to do them, because I look at it as a good opportunity to learn. In fact, this was the project where someone said, hey, we should have static analysis on Java. And I said, I've done that before, I'll set that up. I said, okay, you're on. I went back to my office and oh shit, what do I do now? Because I knew I could learn it. I knew I got it set up. So I did the data stuff at first and learned a lot there. One of Brent, my podcast partner, is now a principal data science manager at Microsoft. And I can say enough of the right words to impress him, so I feel like I'm doing pretty well. So we had this Android app that would run Windows Phone apps. So what we would do, we had this offshore test team, and we would have them give them a list of 20 apps and a generic script. Make sure it'll launch, make sure it'll go to the background, make sure you can do this and that, and exit without crashing, etc. And they would enter bugs, and we would look at them the next morning. We realized not too far in, less than a few weeks in, that through our data, through our telemetry, our instrumentation, our analytics, whatever you want to call it, we already actually knew all the bugs they saw. We could tell what went wrong just through our instrumentation. So we didn't have them not enter bugs. I thought, there's something here. I don't know how many of you are tracking data and using customer data to evaluate quality, but I've now seen enough examples firsthand that there's a lot going on there. In fact, it's been 10 years since Ed Keys at a Google Test Automation Conference said, over 10 years, see if I can get the Arthur Clarke parody quote correct here, sufficiently advanced monitoring is indistinguishable from testing. Mm-hmm. And again, some people go, yeah. Some people go, screw you, you're an idiot. But it's true. It's true.
One thing on that.
Yeah. Thank you for interrupting and showing that it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. In that period of time, do you remember your talk? I think you gave it here on DQP, designated quality person.
So,
do you remember that? Is that the next one?
That's the next.
Oh, I thought that was this one.
That's the next.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let it be a precursor to the impact that had, because I remember that, and I was wondering if when you said a bunch of devs, but here I am, and
So these are all lessons learned leading to where I am today. So when I come back in another year and a half for my next talk, there's going to be yet another evolution, but I got to lead up to where we are. Basically, I do these. I want to go over the history to somehow prove to myself that the thoughts I have today aren't batshit crazy. So I left the dwindling team of crazy to go to another team of slightly different crazy. That's what they're all like at Microsoft. Microsoft Teams, which is the Slack competitor, part of Office. It's actually a pretty good app. So I joined that team again very early on. It was about 70 devs, 60 devs. And the thing I liked about that team was it was a full dev team. I mean, no testers on the team. But the director of development for the team said, I kind of feel better if I have someone here who knows something about quality. And I said, I can do that. I'm that guy, I know quality. Then test everything himself. He says, if you want to deploy your changes, you come pair test them with me, and afterwards we'll stamp them and get them pushed through. And what that's done is it's made the developers he work with, guess what, much better testers. Mm-hmm. And they find bugs together that neither one would have found on their own. So that has been fantastic. Again, going from we're looking for things that accelerate the achievement of shippable quality. When I meet with my directs once a week, what we talk about, one of the items we talk about, standing conversation, is what did you do this week that sped you up? What did you do this week that took a lot of time? We look for ways to eliminate bottlenecks and share things that are helping teams speed up. If we look at the pyramid, the traditional test automation pyramid and the ice cream cone anti-pattern, probably things you're all familiar with. A lot of us fall into here. The devs write a few unit tests, so we write a bunch of integration tests and a whole big pile of UI tests, and it's generally not the most stable automation. But if the focus on end-to-end needs automation specialists, because I think, in my opinion, writing end-to-end automation, especially UI automation, I don't care if it's something with a model like Protractor or Selenium or some point-and-click tool off the internet. Writing good end-to-end tests is one of the hardest things to do in programming. Not in testing, in programming. So if we need specialists there, but we are going to follow the automation pyramid and write fewer UI tests, we should need fewer testers. Fewer automation, actually, I said that wrong. I didn't mean to scare you. Fewer automation specialists. And I do believe that only because I've seen this, whether you agree or not, that although we have a lot of testers a lot of people who write automation all day long, I think the role of writing 90% of automation used for software products will belong to the developers who wrote the feature in the first place. And again, a couple nods, a couple people going, shut up. Yes?
I have a question, something that bothered me a long time ago. So we defined that the role test that to write automation, to focus on automation most of the time. So guess what? He's focusing on coding most of the time, and which is distracted from doing something else, which is something that he did, getting deep dive into the system, understand what he needs to test, and plan his test or design his test. Not good as if he was focusing 100% of his time to do that.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, and I see it in my company, that the quality of the test, when you focus on bringing SDET, and those SDET, what they want to do, to code. And they code it and do the code, and then they not focus on what they really what they need to do. It's finding the better quality of.
I have a phrase that describes all that. What we see in a lot of companies, what I've seen a lot, is all the testing getting in the way of quality. So the way I summarize that.
It's true.
So this is something that I'm keep asking myself. Is this the right direction? Okay, let's do automation.
I'm telling you, it's not. So
It's true.
let me jump ahead here because I'm going to hit a little bit of that in a second, but we can talk some more about that.
Question?
Yes,
Just,
I'm introducing the modern tester. Look at him, he's beautiful.
Oh, there you
All right, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So,
Looks kind of like Matt.
no, it's, this is a great quote, and I agree, and I want to make sure I got it right because I wrote it. Making good end-to-end tests is one of the hardest jobs in programming. Second.
I would use tasks instead of jobs.
Making good end-to-end tests.
And I use that a lot. I think I've written some low-level code in Xbox and Windows and crummy versions of Windows, but I think writing good UI animation is much more difficult. Even end-to-end. So this is the modern tester. Doesn't have a name because he may not be called the modern tester if I find a better name. And as I mentioned before, our job is what I call a modern tester, where I see my future going, is to accelerate the achievement of shippable quality. And like I said, sometimes that's testing, but it's other things too. The focus on accelerating the team, I mentioned specializing generalist, and I consider myself a specializing generalist. I am a couple things I'm good at, but I always want to know a lot of things. When Keith and I were in the test architect group, one of the lines I think we threw around there once in a while is know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. And I think that serves my testing role out. And some of these things just describe good testers, always learning. I've told you some stories about me doing that. One difference with agile testing is this. I think it's so important that the modern tester and having that quality person really, really be an expert or be knowledgeable, very knowledgeable in understanding how customers use the product and their success and their failure via data. Also, better than the feature team. Write some tests sometimes, as I mentioned. Maybe one thing is, I talked about like code reviewing and helping. Being a quality coach and test coach is super important. And some people are a little afraid of that, but I'm starting to see, again, I don't know, my job is all what to do, but I do see more and more people taking on being a coach or a mentor or helping developers write better tests as part of what they do. And I see some people go, I'm not helping them. If they get better at it, then I won't have a job. But I'll throw this out here now and talk more about it in a minute. But my goal is to work myself out of a job. Not to get my job eliminated, but I see a path, and my path for success in my current job is to talk about building this community of quality and testing experts. And I have to give them a lot of coaching and mentoring right now, but they're getting better and better. And I need to coach and mentor developers on the teams across all of Unity services, hundreds of developers, to help them get better at testing and quality and data and all these things that we're talking about. But if I don't do it right, I do the same thing for years and years and years. But in my opinion, if I'm successful, this community not only thrives, but it becomes self-sustaining. And at that point, once I have a self-sustaining community, my role is no longer needed. It doesn't mean I get fired. It means I find another job to do that's more challenging. As you can tell from my other stories, I kind of have this odd obsession for finding things that I'm not capable of doing and trying to figure out how to do them anyway. So that's what I want to keep on doing for as long as I work.
Question.
Yes.
Challenge. I'm not sure I completely agree with everything you just said. And I'll tell you.
Oh no!
Yes. Here's why. I think on that last bullet point you just brought up, that role, there's something that you might want to consider adding, and that's the word continuous improvement. Here's why.
I put always learning. I can change that.
Well, always learning is part of that, because I'm seeing financial companies, medical companies putting in senior VP positions dedicated to cost and money and investment in that role title to the organization. And I think as quality testing people, if we brand ourselves to align with continuous improvement and that investment in the enterprise, then our role becomes a little bit more widespread. We find funding available to justify, hey, maybe there's disparate teams that we need to improve how collaboration and data and sustainability.
I am totally stealing that concept for if I ever give this talk again, because test is often looked at, test is the cost center. They don't make sense. But in this role, we align with dollar signs.
Yes.
And people like that.
So if you brand yourself and align with continuous improvement, there's a lot of opportunity.
I'll send you your consultant fee later.
You're welcome.
No, okay. Can I follow up on Brian, or you want to keep on?
Yeah, kind of both.
Okay.
If you've had other questions, I'm going to pause you for a minute, because I'm going to skip that. I don't normally do that. I have a draft of these modern testing principles. I'm just going to show them. The deck will be available on the website. Someone nod their head? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I've already shared it. Really, I never do a slide build. Again, we accelerate the team. The customer, super important. Want to help the team create higher quality. It summarizes everything I've said before. And except for number 6, which is the one that scares people, I guess I already told you, is I am actually striving to reduce or eliminate the need for a testing role, for a dedicated testing role. Testing activity still happens. We're not going to ship untested software. These are a work in progress, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. But I do want to walk the walk. There is, you've read not read, but you guys heard this idea of the crossing the chasm? And the idea is when you have a new innovation, is how do you get it past the innovators and early adopters to the majority? Many of us in this room had a smartphone before the iPhone came out. And we had a smartphone, we lived over here. We had the touchscreen phone, we're over here. what I think Apple did with the iPhone, this is going to make sense later, is they made people that didn't know they wanted a smartphone want a smartphone. A good example of crossing the chasm where innovation comes in. Let's squint your eyes. It's a small screen, that helps. But I look at this curve and where things are. Excuse my art. I didn't draw the chasm here, but we have, definitely over on this side, we have teams doing what I call modern testing. What I described, there are teams besides me doing this. There's agile testing, a lot of you doing this. But the chunk of the work, if you look at the whole industry, the people that don't come to talks like this, it's a separate test team, probably a bunch of aesthetics, writing a lot of automation. That's where the bulk of the world is. So I think we're on the edge of, especially with agile testing, across industries, of crossing this chasm over and making it more mainstream. And I've seen enough to believe that's true, and going back to my first slide, not feel like it's a wild guess into the future. I see these things happen. So I don't think they may not be something you're seeing, I think they're things that are going to happen. So now I'm going to walk the walk with my adventure and tell you things I'm doing now that are working, that are leading my life as a modern, again, air quote, modern tester. I mentioned less testing, more quality. And what we're doing with data, and some other things around the org. I'll dive into all this. So ignore the numbers on there, it's just a picture. But following up on your point exactly is I've asked all of my test teams, and I've let the dev directors know this too, but when was the last time you had a test manager tell their team to write fewer tests? And that's what I did to my team. I said, I expect you guys to all write far fewer tests this year. If you are writing more tests, you're failing. You need to help the developers you work with write more and better tests. And the tests you write, I like the Google model of small tests, medium, large, and now they have huge tests. And if we're going to write tests with our expertise, it's probably more in the huge than some large. We're going to write, like, just had, I forgot what team it was. Oh, one of my testers in Montreal wrote a really nice stress framework for their component. I expect those kind of things to come out of our test experts. But across the board, I'm seeing the developers on our teams write more and more tests, and I feel like that's the right direction. So I had one of my senior leads say, I never thought a year ago that someone would tell me to write fewer tests, and I'd agree with you. So we get it. So I'm feeling good about that. I feel like that's the right direction. We're getting better at data. We're not as, despite being a services org, and again, services at Unity, everything that uses the internet. In our ad space, we're actually pretty good at using data to assess customer quality. Not as good as we can be. But getting everybody across the org to get a little better at that. Just get that. What I find is those of you that have used data to understand customer quality, it's addictive. Once you get that first insight, you go, oh, what else can I learn? Yeah. And with every time I got people on board of this, they've gotten better and better. We have a nice data platform with a SQL queryable way to discover what's going on. We don't have all the good data in there yet that we want, but my team are both working with developers to add the right analytics points, in some cases writing that themselves. We start a lot with use cases, like how can I tell if this use case is successful in the field? And they'll make sure we have a nice little discussion, brainstorm about it, find the right things to help measure that, get that out there, start measuring customer success and failure in the field. One of the things very valuable across the board, just always helps, is logging customer errors. And it makes a nice ratio. Per 1,000 users, how many errors do they see? And that way, if you have some things that are proxies, and as Eric Ries calls the one true metric, things that measure your customer success, then as you make changes, you can see if those things positively or negatively impact that experience. So I can't emphasize that much. And I feel good about the progress we're making, although we have a long way to go. Remember the Xbox team? I have my shared tools across the org. like most pre-IPO companies, I don't have a lot of free headcount coming my way. I got a bunch of testers who are super busy. But I need some of these tools that can be shared across the org, both for data analytics and reporting and a bunch of different things. By eliminating some bottlenecks, I'm freeing up a little bit of time in pockets here and there across my team, and we've already started some cross-team, shared source projects to help each other out. So my shared tools team version 2 is coming along. I think it's going to help solve a lot of our problems. And again, it helps with that concept of accelerating the achievement of shippable quality. And then the last thing, which I'm scaring my boss by doing this, but it's the right thing to do. So I manage this team. Remember the asterisk, about 40 people on my team? I think it's 45 by now, but again, still asterisk. They work for me, and they're part of the feature team. In ads, there's a feature team, there's a bunch of testers that are part of the feature team. Same for our analytics product. That's pretty typical how I think most companies run, where I have a QA org/community and I have people embedded all over the place. I started flipping it up. I took 2/3 of my org and transferred them away from me. I had them work, they now work for their dev directors that own their products. I have 2 ads leads that report to the VP of ads. I have other leads that report elsewhere. Nothing changed. I still have regular one-on-ones. I still help them with strategy and direction. But I think that move will accelerate making this community self-sustainable. I wanted to move the rest of them, so I'm down to, I have 1 lead who owns the website, and I own our internal enterprise apps too. Quality. But everybody else, I have that lead and a bunch of individual contributors working on products around North America. I wanted to move them as well, but I got whoa, hold on, we're not ready for that. Aren't you doing enough already? So there's a great line from Heffitz in a book called Leadership on the Line, where he says, leadership is disappointing people at a level they can absorb. So that's kind of where I live. So I'm going to hold off. The goal there still is. It'll take maybe another year to convince him, but within a year-ish, give or take a few months, I would like to be a director of quality with no HR direct reports. And I feel comfortable with that. And the great thing about working with a small company and who sort of embraced change along with me is I told our HR director what I was doing. I said, but is it still possible for me to have sort of that HR view into, I have to look at salaries and review. I'm still part of that whole process. And the answer, and this is no huge dig on, I'll call it Microsoft. In a corporate job, a larger company, never really got help. But it's like, of course, Alan, we can do that for you. That sounds awesome. So I'm excited about that. That makes it a little easier to try this. Depending on the size of the company you're at, your mileage may vary. But I feel pretty good about the direction I'm going with here. I feel like it aligns with the things that Brent and I have been talking about with modern testing. So I kind of feel like I may be onto something. So as I said, we twisted the org. It's that way now. And then this is the longer version of this. But we're brainstorming. We have a Slack channel to support our podcast. And we get a lot of good discussions. And one thing that came out of there was this idea of, a lot of words, minimizing the gap between hypothesis and product impact. How can we, and that falls right into accelerate the achievement of quality. But it's something it's a principle that's really become ingrained in me as I've been in this new job and a new role, and 2, as I thought hard about where testing is going and how this concept of modern testing fits in and what it means. And the adventure has been fun so far, and I gave you that list of 4 bullet points of things that I'm doing right now, but I imagine, again, when I come back in a year and a half, it's going to be a lot bigger and a lot more interesting things to share. So, my blog is angryweasel.com, same website like A/B testing for the podcast, and I have a